Hey guys, welcome back. This is topic 1.4, Challenges of the Articles of Confederation for AP Government. In this lesson, you're going to learn about the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and how they led to Shays Rebellion. So, the Articles of Confederation were the first constitution or the first government of the United States of America. After the Revolution, the founders wanted to ensure the protection of individual rights. Remember way back to topic 1.1 when we talked about limited government? In order to do this, they created a national government that was intentionally weak and called it the Articles of Confederation at the Second Continental Congress. In this government, the states held most, if not all, of the power. However, even though it left the national government weak, it was still understood that from this point forward, the states would be united. This is the first time that we see the country actually called the United States of America. The Articles of Confederation had several good points. The first being that it worked throughout the entire Revolutionary War. Each state was able to protect and defend itself in the most effective way, thus providing the unexpected victory over the British, of course with a little bit of French help. It also helped to resolve some of our major treaties and created a way for new states to be added. Though, at this point, Canada was given some special privileges if they decided to join the Union. These new states, under the Northwest Ordinance, would allow no slavery, a first in our history. However, this does end up setting the eventual stage for the conflict between slave states versus free states being admitted into the Union, and eventually the Civil War. The Articles, however, proved to be very weak. Remember, a confederation is a style of government in which the regional governments hold all the power. So under the Articles, the national government could not tax, only the states could. The national government actually had to ask the states for money. And guess what? Most states didn't want to give the national government any money. The only branch created under the Articles was the legislative branch. And in order to pass a law in that legislature, they needed at least 9 votes out of 13. In order to amend the Articles, all 13 states had to agree. Finally, only states could raise up an army. As we will see shortly, this ends up leaving the new government weak and vulnerable. These weaknesses led to other problems as well. Since the national government had no money of their own, they were unable to pay off the debts that they had incurred during the war. Merchants would refuse cash from other states, and they would especially refuse cash issued from the Continental Congress. The only currency that everybody would take was gold, and it was in extremely short supply. This meant that the government could not pay off its veterans, the very people who had risked their lives in order to obtain freedom from Great Britain. Daniel Shays was one of those veterans and was a Massachusetts farmer. He was wounded in battle and had to return home before the war was over, meaning he had to go home without pay. Because of this, he was unable to pay his own debts, and the Massachusetts courts summoned him in order to get him to pay. At this point in history, if you owed money, you were actually sent to prison. He would have lost his farm had General Lafayette not gifted him a sword, which Shays then sold in order to pay off his debts. But soon, Shays found out that many of the farmers around him had experienced the exact same thing, and so he decided to do something about it. When Shays realized that he was not the only veteran struggling because of lack of pay, he decided to organize protests against the state courts that were throwing people into debtor's prison. Eventually, these protests turned into an all-out rebellion. After all, these were war veterans. They knew how to fight. Massachusetts was slow to respond to their demands and eventually ended up having to ask the federal government, the national government, for help. While Massachusetts had the power to raise an army, the national government didn't. And the army that Massachusetts would have raised up was fighting against them. The rebellion began to spread, and other states began being involved at this point too. Congress ended up having to meet. They couldn't provide an army to protect the states, and they had no money with which to pay the soldiers. They finally came to the conclusion that they had to start over with an entirely new government. The lack of power from the Articles of Confederation was going to tear the country apart. Eventually, the rebellion was stopped, but Massachusetts had to pay mercenaries in order to fill their militia to do it. From Shays Rebellion, the framers learned a few things, but most began to see the benefits of having a stronger central government. This ends up leading to the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Many of the delegates went to the convention thinking that the Articles of Confederation needed to be scrapped, while others thought that it just needed to be changed or tweaked a little. Rhode Island thought that the articles were fine just the way they were and didn't even show up, leading to the committee that was at the convention being called the Grand Committee. But eventually, a new constitution was drafted, which created a strong federal or central government. And we're going to talk more about that in our next lesson. So, in this lesson, you should have learned about the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and how those led to Shays Rebellion. If there was anything you missed, please go back through the video to anything you need to rewatch and do that. Then, make sure to answer the summarizing question in your notes so that you can get a stamp the next time we're in class. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Bye.